Okay, so somebody mentioned to me um, in a thread on Reddit, they said, so what are some solutions then? Because I'm clearly making a lot of videos about what's wrong with the system as a whole and showing the holes in the system that are actually contributing to homelessness, and also showing the mishandling of budgets and funding and revenue generated. And if it were to be reallocated and used in a different manner, things would start to progress. Okay. So here are some solutions based off of my 7 years going through homelessness in Victoria, BC. Okay. So let me tell you a story about when I was homeless. I ran into a guy and we had a conversation. It was at Amwin House. And he was telling me that, man, I'm done with this life. I can't take it anymore. I need help, and I'm ready to go to a rehabilitation center. I'm ready to go today. And he's like, I can't live like this anymore. He's like, people are dying left, right, and center. And I said, bro, I'm telling you, man, like I've been through a lot in my life and I've survived. You know what I mean? And it's because I was always able to flee from the darkness, instead of stay in it and dwell in it. You know, I knew I was in the darkness, but I knew I had to flee. I knew I had to run. You know what I mean? And it's the hardest thing to just throw yourself into something like that. But that's what you need to do. You need to not even think about it and just pick yourself up and throw yourself into a rehabilitation center, somewhere that's a 6 month to a year program. You need the 6 to a year, if anything, a year minimum. You know what I'm saying? Because that reprograms you. And it'll be harder to get out and consciously make a decision about going back to addiction, because you're that much far away from it. You've been that far away from it for so long. So let's start here with this story. I looked up all the places, the rehabilitation centers in the city, and there was like 3, at the time. This was like 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know how many there is now, but I guarantee you there's probably very little, like usual, because this city has been like that for the last decade. They keep things at a minimum. When, like I said, when there's hundreds of millions of dollars being generated around homelessness and addiction and mental health, their budgets need to be reallocated. How much they're paying themselves and their salaries needs to be looked at. Okay, and money needs to be reallocated towards different ideas that are structured from the actual people of the street, people with real lived experience, people that have been homeless for 10, 15 years. These are the people that know what's wrong. But these people that are raising all these funds and all hundreds of millions of dollars advocating and speaking for the homeless have never even been homeless. But they're the ones in charge of getting all this money, generating all this money, and then using it to do certain things that are useless to the progression of the homelessness population. So anyways, I walked him to the closest one. Actually, he called. I showed him all the ones. We sat there. He called them all. They were all full. And we went to one that was closest. I said, let's just go there. Let's just go and see who we can talk to, So we go there. And again, we're full. And he called every single place, we're full. And there was only a few places in Victoria, just a very few places. And I was like, for 1,500 homeless people, they say, with the majority having addiction, why is there only 3 or 4 places when there's all this money? And you guys are saying, oh, we're running this program and we're creating this program and we're doing this and we've generated this much money this year and we've raised funds to do this. If they really wanted to fix homelessness, they could reallocate their budgets and put it towards things that are actually going to progress homelessness. Okay, so first of all, If somebody has an addiction, right, that's the first thing that needs to get tackled, right? Because if they get housing while they have an addiction, because of the addiction is controlling them, it's not their conscious being, it's the addiction, it's the chemical, connection to that drug. It's not a conscious movement, okay? You don't know what you're doing. You don't know why you're doing it. It's and there's things in the drugs that are affecting people's mental health, obviously, and their decision making. So you don't want to taint what you have, a blessing, by having a place without crushing the addiction first. So the first thing that needs to be there is more rehabilitation centers, and they need to be more structured by people that have overcome addiction. People that have overcome homelessness, overcome addiction, are the ones that should be dictating how these rehabilitation centers are being structured, okay? That's not currently a thing right now, okay? That's not a thing. It's very easy to make that happen. They just choose not to, and I'll explain why. Now, the Salvation Army. So now we know there's not enough rehabilitation centers, and the structures, the way that they're structured, is structured incorrectly from people that don't even have the addiction or real life experience or 10, 15 years homeless in the streets. That's why it's not working. And they're not listening to the people of the street, okay? Find leaders in the homelessness population in the community that have overcome homelessness, overcome addiction, and use them to sit down and come up with ideas of how these rehabilitation centers can be structured, or what is missing, what needs to be added, what needs to be taken away, what is going to work, and why, okay? They know the answers. They know. And they know what's wrong with the system and why the system's contributing to homelessness. Number two, the Salvation Army, okay? It's a rehabilitation shelter. It's a sober shelter, sort of. Now, here's where they can change things. If they wanted to actually, the people that are homeless in the Salvation Army, if they really wanted them to get out, get a place, get employed, here's how they could do that, which they do not currently do, okay? Number one, you get 30 days there, and then you have to pay $600 a month. Now, anybody that's actually been through chronic homelessness or homelessness in general knows, okay, that it's mathematically and virtually impossible to overcome homelessness in 30 days, to generate enough income in 30 days, to do anything in 30 days. 30 days has never been enough. It never is going to be enough. So these people end up either going back out in the streets to sleep outside because everywhere's full, or they pay the $600 and then they get stuck into this loop, right? And they can't, that's the $600 is the money that they need, okay? People on disability, on PWD, only get $1,350 a month. People on welfare income assistance only get $700 to $800 a month, okay? So take $600 out of the welfare. That leaves you with $200 left. That's for your basic needs, and that's not even enough for that. You know what I'm saying? Take 600 out of 1,300, right? There's not much left. Okay, yeah, it's an improvement from income assistance, right? But now you're just below the bare minimum of how much you need just for your basic needs. You're gonna have to choose between a haircut, clothes, and shoes. Like, you're not gonna be able to get a haircut, shoes, and clothes. You're gonna have to knock one out. You know what I'm saying? But regardless, so another thing, you got to pay $600 a month, right? And if they really wanted people to progress out of that cycle of staying and living in there long term and not actually progressing into a place, first of all, the staff could get to know and build relationships with these people. And then if they've built a close enough relationship with these people, they could be references for a place, because that's one of the number one things standing in our way from getting into a place is references. For 7 years, I struggle with that. Okay. It's very difficult. And people aren't willing to put their name on the line for anybody, even though they say they're there to support them. Okay. References. Build a relationship with these people. Number two, the $600 a month that you're supposed to pay to live there. Okay. First of all, This is a nonprofit Christian organization, okay? The Salvation Army, okay? They already generate millions and millions and millions of dollars. If they really wanted to fix homelessness and actually have people go from homeless to housed to employed, they could reallocate their budgets to do that, okay? But they invest into things that are just going to not really have a detrimental effect and not progress anyone out of homelessness, but keep the machine going so that way they can continue to generate this income. And I have evidence of that, okay? This is through 10 years of going through homelessness in BC. Not 10 years, but 7, 8 years, you know what I mean? 15 years in total across Canada. I could see the differences in between provinces and how they handle homelessness, how they deal with budgets. BC, there's something wrong. Okay, so point being is that if they really wanted to help people, right, they could take that $600 a month, right, and they could save it for them. As easy as that. As easy as that. Okay. You're living in a dorm with 30 other men, okay, in bunk beds. Why? I get it. Things need to be paid for, right? But you don't understand that, again, these are nonprofit organizations. There is supposed to be government funding to keep these places alive for the quality of life for the homeless and for the disabled, because we live in Canada. It's not a third world country. There is more than enough resource to do this, okay, especially in the richest city in the entire country, okay? And on top of it, they're so good at raising all these funds. They got Trevor Bakken, they got all these, guys out there holding up $30,000 checks, $100,000 checks. So why can't you raise funds to keep that place going while you let these homeless people stack up their $600 a month, and you give them 6 months, and you say, you got 6 months, we're taking that $600 off you every month for 6 months. There's your start right there. There's your first and last. There's your furniture. There's a vehicle. If your license, you want to do driving school, it's all right there. You know what I mean? Maybe even a year, whatever. It's just give them that time, give them the ability to do this. Because if you're paying $600 a month, and even if you're going to work, buddy, I've saw guys stay stuck like that for 5 years, and they don't even do drugs, and they work, but they're just like, bro, a lot of things happen. A lot of things happen when you're homeless, even when you're not homeless. Unexpected costs, unexpected trips to the hospital, unexpected, whatever. Maybe you're more hungry today than you were the other day. Maybe the food at the Salvation Army is making you sick, okay? And then you had to make a conscious decision about you have to pay for your own food, okay? Because there's so many expenses. You're always going to need to spend money every single day. That's going to slow down, if not take away your ability to get out of homelessness, okay? You'll never know until it happens to you. Once you go through the process, you'll say, oh, okay, I didn't think of that. I didn't think that could happen. I wasn't expecting that. Wow, I thought I would have had enough money for sure. This is terrible. You will go through that process if you go through that process, and most people will not, okay? So again, if they really wanted to fix homelessness, just from doing that alone, the homelessness population would go from 1,500 to 1,000. 500 people would go through the Salvation Army a year, go through this 1 year, this 6 months, get that money stacked up, and then them have an employment program for 6 months that gives you a certification that teaches you how to work at the Salvation Army, that teaches you how to get certifications to get involved in advocacy work around homelessness. They're not providing a pathway out of homelessness into housing, into employment, or they're not offering from homelessness to a rehabilitation center, to the Salvation Army to go through that program, to housed, to employed, and then have support workers work with them for a year or two to ease them into stability. Now, they have workers and support workers and peer support workers for every other thing except for this process, okay? This process would work. I'm telling you right now, this is one very small piece out of a big system that can be developed that would literally take 1,500 people homeless into zero, okay? over a period of time within the next 5 years. Now they say this all the time. Oh, this is going to change. This is going to get rid of all the homeless. They just, bro, how many times did they say that? There's still the same amount of number of homeless people out there. Okay. After COVID, they're like, this is going to fix everything. Everyone's going to go from homeless to housed. Go look at the Pandora Strip. It's still the same way, bro. Like, they're lying. Okay. And if you were homeless for, 7 years to 10 years to 15 years, it would become so obvious that something is not right. And it's so organized and systematic that you would be like, how could they make a mistake like this? This is intentional, but why? Money has always been the root of all evil, okay? Greed. I'm telling you, if you think that the one party of individuals in the world that are the most honest, that are not, tempted, that don't do any wrong, okay? Even the fucking cops break the law, okay? The law breaks the law. Governments have been caught breaking the law. Google it. There are open cases and pending charges from RCMP. Bro, the RCMP were found to be in the human trafficking ring. They were found to be moving drugs from Mexico into Canada, from the States into Canada. Bro, the corruption has always been there. So if even the cops and the law and the government have been caught breaking the law, like proven, it's there on the news, paper, documents, first and last names, it's all there. But you think that the people in charge of the homelessness population and all the money that goes through homelessness, mental health, and addiction, but those are the only guys in the world that aren't breaking the law, that aren't doing things out of greed, that aren't misusing budgets and stuff of that nature, that aren't claiming and receipting everything to the CRA and the charity data. If you think that, there is absolutely no reasoning with somebody like you, okay? Because you have to understand that there is corruption on all levels of the system, okay? From the guy that works at Save On Foods that's stealing from the till, to the guy that manages Save On Foods that's been, finding tax loopholes to steal money, okay? And this is just low-level stuff. It gets crazier as you go up. Government levels, charity levels, organizations, that's where the most money gets stolen, bro. Okay? So, again, let me continue with this process, okay? Now, if the Salvation Army were to do that, the same people from 4 years ago would not be there anymore, okay? I know because every time I walk by there, I say hi to dudes that were there 5 years ago. They've been there the whole time. And you know what? The Salvation Army likes it that way because that brings in their $600 a month, okay? And that's why they're always full and you can never get in. They already have what they need. They have filled the capacity to keep that amount of money coming in. That's their goal, okay? And it does not cost that much, and I can prove it, to keep that system going, okay? I told you, there's cutting costs. There's accepting donations and gifts. There's raising funds. There's using expired food that gets thrown out from every single shopping place, every store, every grocery store that is going to get thrown out. They go collect it and they serve it up to the homeless. So that cuts out their food budget. They don't have to pay for food if they do it like that. And they've done this for years. So let's continue up the process. Now, that's the Salvation Army, right? More rehabilitation centers structured by people with lived experience. There has to be a process from A to B in the Salvation Army, and they, instead of taking that $600 off of them and generating $30,000 a month, okay, the government is supposed to be funding a certain amount of employment to that place, funding keeping the lights on, okay, you know what I mean? It's not impossible for that to happen. That's what our tax dollars go to, is stuff like that. That's why we live in a country that has a taxation system, okay, in the best country in the world that you can live in, okay, in the most abundant country that you can live in. People are trying to flee from all over the world to come here because there's abundance, okay, and we just want it all to ourselves. But listen, that process would change everything, okay? Now, you've saved money for them, $600 a month. You do that for 6 months, you do that for a year, that's more than enough to start, okay? Again, this is just the foundational piece to a process that would work. There's so many components, obviously, and so many different things that we would have to sit down and talk about and look at to strengthen this process, because there's always going to be something, right? But first, we need to get to this part, the first part, to even get to that part. So all that stuff don't matter. So, anyways, now, if they were to do that, now they need to create employment opportunities to keep these people housed, okay? You expect everybody to do the McDonald's. You expect everyone to do the Tim Hortons, the construction, the roofing. If that's really what you think and what you expect, then it's obvious why people from homelessness never get out. You know what I mean? They never get out. This is why, okay? The whole thing is systematically built to keep homelessness where it is so they can continue to profit and generate and fundraise and ask for funding and grants to keep themselves employed. They have no interest in progressing homelessness out of its current state. If they did, they would do stuff like this with the money. People's budgets can be allocated. There's hundreds of millions of dollars generated around homelessness in Victoria, BC, that nonprofits and charities are eating up. Okay, and they're paying themselves $160,000 salaries for a normal 9-to-5 job, $200,000, $250,000 salaries. Okay, and I can access these things, by the way, these statistics. They don't tell you about this. They don't tell the homeless population. They don't even tell their employees that you can go and find this information, this data out. They don't want, that's their biggest top secret, is their finances. If you can figure out their finances, you can figure out what's wrong and why homelessness is stuck the way it is. There's greed involved, there's lying, and there's fraud, believe it or not. And if you think that can't happen and they're just perfect and nothing bad can happen, well, then you're just not a realistic person in general, right? So, now, employment opportunities. There's more than enough funding. Instead of the UN, that literally in front of me got their own grant approved for $63,000 to simulate homelessness. So all you're doing is making a program that simulates what a homeless person goes through. $63,000. You know what you could have done instead of just reflect our own lives back to ourselves? You could have created employment opportunities, okay, to learn, to teach. So when they go through that process through the Salvation Army and they finally get out and they have enough money to start their life and they got a place and everything else and they have references from the same place they lived for 6 months, which they don't do, okay, then you could say, hey, congratulations, becoming, housed and being housed. You need to be housed for a year, and now you can enter our employment program. And it's a 6-month program, and you will get a certification out of that will teach you how to work in the same shelter that you lived at, to help people that have been through what you've been through and show them that you're living proof that they can go from homeless to sober to, the Salvation Army, to housed, to employed. This is a cycle that needs to be proven through lived experience, through the homeless person that says, hey, look, here's the proof. Now it's only up to you. But when you're homeless and you can't see no proof that anybody from the street made it out and got a job and got employed, they're all stuck and it stays like that for 10, 15 years and you see the same faces, no one gets out. And it's not because they choose to be, it's because the system itself is designed in a way that keeps people trapped, that doesn't offer a clear way out, a pathway out into housing, stability, sobriety, into employed. The process and the steps and the programs are not there. Why is it that you're generating over $100 million a year in Victoria, but you have no employment programs for a specific marginalized group of people? But you advocate so strongly for this marginalized group of individuals, the most vulnerable of the community, but you're not willing to provide the basic steps and what it takes in order to, even if you were going through that process, that's what you would need to get out of homelessness. You know that. So why haven't you put in place this process? There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that, okay? And only going through this process would you start to identify this. And then it would become a nightmare for you. And everything would make sense, okay? So anyways, I'm gonna make a part two. I'm running out of space here, so I'll make a part two. But now we'll talk about the employment side of things. It can't be just basic, simple employment. These people have been through something different. They need to find purpose in the employment. The college is too hard to get through. They want you to do an English and a math assessment test. Okay, it doesn't take a grade 12 English and grade 12 math, okay, to show somebody, okay, how to work at one of these places. Okay, you don't require that. It's an unnecessary requirement that is keeping people stuck without education. And the educational system itself is there to capitalize and benefit and profit as well. So we need a new pathway for education for people that are going through homelessness, which would be through programs run by people with lived experience that can teach them, hey, I went from A to B, and this is how I did it. This is how you can do it. These are the certifications we can get you, and we can do it in 6 months. Now, you don't have to do the grade 12 math and the grade 12 English and math assessment through Camosun and through these main places.